Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all having a nice Saturday. It's Saturday today, isn't it? I lose track of the days quite a lot. Well, today's video, I really wanted to talk about the amount of damage that Harry and Meghan have done to the monarchy, really, from where I'm sitting. It's an awful lot. It's a lot more than I thought. I guess it's a lot more than a lot of you guys thought. Now, don't get me wrong, I think with a lot of people, the monarchy's popularity has grown as a result of Meghan and Harry's behaviour. And that has been my belief and still is over the last few years to now. What I didn't realise until speaking to Ben and then subsequently other young people is how much misconception there is about the monarchy with younger people, but perhaps not all. I'm sure there are lots of younger people who really understand and appreciate how the monarchy works, but equally there are a lot that don't. One of the most striking things to me from my conversation with my own son was he didn't seem to put into the equation that Buckingham Palace is an enormous building. I mean, as we all know, it's undergone enormous renovation in recent years. But let's put the renovation to one side. In Ben's mind, and a lot of people's mind, it's just a building. It's a self-maintaining building. There's no appreciation of how many cleaners it takes just to keep it clean, and the different jobs and the different functions. It's a working building. I mean, for example, our house, it'll take me 6-7 hours to clean that, and there's only 4 bedrooms. These things don't clean themselves. I suppose the argument could be made, I hope you can hear me over, it's a bit windy today. The argument could be made that some young people, like I clean Ben's room sometimes. He does clean his own room a lot. And he keeps it actually pretty nice. But I clean his room, and perhaps people they don't appreciate these things. And one of the most expensive overheads of any business is the payroll. Paying people. People are valuable. People's services are important, and all that's sort of been pushed by the wayside by Harry and Meghan. The other thing that came across to me strongly after speaking to Ben, and I know we were doing it a bit tongue-in-cheek, was that there's a blur. He doesn't understand if Harry really is in the royal family or not. He also seems to think, or be under the... I'll just move my chair a bit, so I've put you guys there so you're out of the wind. He seems to think that because Harry attends certain events, that they are royal events because Harry is a royal. And it got me thinking, I bet a lot of people think that. I mean, I see Harry and Meghan turn up at all sorts of daft events I've never heard of before, aviation legend, that kind of shit. And perhaps a lot of people think that he is representing the monarchy. We know he's not, but a lot of people may feel like that. Now, I'm going to tell you guys a story because I was trying to explain this to Ben, but obviously I don't think Ben or perhaps younger people have to arrange a wedding or a function or plan it. It's like a swan on the surface in an ideal world, swimming smoothly but paddling like hell beneath the surface. My father was the Under-Sheriff of Sussex. I was born in Sussex, so are my sisters, so was my dad, they have big connections to Sussex. So, I mean, the fact that Harry and Meghan are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex is... Any fellow Sussex people out there? I relate, totally. Well, my dad's job, it was a paid job. The title of Under-Sheriff of Sussex. What is it? Well, it's the shrievalty. I never really fully understood it myself. But one of the things they do is appoint high sheriffs, which I think they do a year. They're generally voluntary people, they're put forward by other people, and they attend ceremonies. Forgive me if there are any high sheriffs out there, because I never really understood the system of the shrievalty. And it was a big contract that the law firm that my father was the senior partner in, that was one of the big contracts, the shrievalty. And whoever happened to be the senior partner at the time basically was the under-sheriff. So when my father's time came, when his predecessor retired, he became the under-sheriff. What does an under-sheriff do? Well, lots of things, but One of the main things is a lot of civic ceremonies, a lot of church services. My father used to use a bugle band from the Gurkhas. He adored the Gurkhas. I think there were 6 of them, and they had silver trumpets, and he was so proud that he was able to get them to come and represent. And they would have this church service in, I think they used St Anne's a lot in Lewes, but also Chichester Cathedral. One year I distinctly remember one of the high sheriffs had suddenly had an idea and said, oh, we haven't had a Chichester Cathedral service in a long time, let's have one now. And my father, being like the secretary, had to do it. Well, the annual date was within 14 days of the guy saying he wanted to do that. And it took a lot of organisation. Now, my dad had a receptionist, a young girl. She was 16 when she started. And she was one of these YTS schemes, do you remember, government schemes? And she was just wonderful, marvellous. She was a very brash character, lots of fun, my complete opposite to my dad. My dad was very upright, you know, it was, Mr. Mont's not pleased, Mr. Mont. Whereas this girl, I'll call her Ali, she told it how it was. And if she thought my dad was out of order, she'd go, no way, Mr. Mont, I'm not having any of it. And people were scared at first. They think, oh, how's he going to react? But my dad adored her. In fact, when she was about 18, the police came in to see my dad and explained that her father had died of a heart attack. And they needed to tell her, and my dad said, can I tell her rather than you? And that was obviously very difficult. And so after that, Ali, she really became one of us. She treated my dad as if he was her dad. Well, fast forward a few years, and this guy says, I want to have the Chichester Cathedral service in 2 weeks. My dad was like, oh my God, the security. And I remember the weekend that Ali came round, and he and Ali spent the weekend in his office with little bits of paper on the floor with all the names of all the bishops and the dignitaries, a copy of Debrett's, a copy of Who's Who, a big library of do's and don'ts. My dad was like, oh my God, if we put the wrong person next to the wrong person, the amount of offence that will be caused, we've got to make sure that everything's all right. Plus, this was kind of around the time of Bobby Sands and hunger strike. They were prisoners, and they were not eating, and it was all connected to the IRA, and so security was really, really a big concern. And they did it. They pulled it off. Between my dad and Ali, they pulled the whole thing off. Obviously, other members of staff had to print off copious invitations and paperwork, but basically it was that weekend. And they were both so stressed. I remember my mum taking down cups of tea and Coca-Colas and going, everything all right? Not now, not now, don't open the window, all the paper will move. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and I think it's about time the monarchy fought back. And I'm not talking about the removal of titles, although I think that sort of thing is going to happen. Now, I remember a few years ago, quite a few years ago, there was a documentary which was quite candid. They were filming inside Buckingham Palace. I remember laughing seeing the late monarch and Prince Philip all dressed up in their regalia, looking over the banisters, trying to figure out if a lift would work to get a guest upstairs who couldn't use the stairs. And it was just so lovely. It was like a peek behind the scenes. And I think that documentary helped a lot of people to understand that when they see all the regalia of the royal family, there's an awful lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. Now, what I'm not suggesting is a fly-on-the-wall Kardashian style of the actual royal family. But what I would love to see is a documentary, or better still, a YouTube channel, where they can show the people that work behind the scenes and how much effort goes into, for example, the Commonwealth Service at Westminster Abbey. Obviously not going into detail of security, but people who have traditional roles, where the audience can see that's a real human being that has that job, that possesses that job, has great pride in what they do, so that everybody can see how it works, especially for young people to see how it works. And yes, I think it would engage younger people. Not only the traditional staff, but the more modern approach of staff that may be in charge of, for example, YouTube channels and social media, where they have to navigate and understand and decide how they're going to do things, how they're going to go about things. I think like a whole array of the staff at Buckingham Palace, and a big focus on Buckingham Palace itself, because it is a working building. I mean, Ben, until I explained to him the other night, the royal family don't own Buckingham Palace. It's Crown property. He was oblivious, really. The cleaners, how much, I know there have been other documentaries, but I mean something which sort of shows that the people a bit more. And I think that type of approach needs to be more and more, so that, for example, people who believe that it would be a better system to get rid of the monarchy and have a presidency of some sort. And I'm not talking about like, it wouldn't be like the President of the United States. President of the United States, whoever they may be at any one time, has power. What people are suggesting for the United Kingdom is that there'd still be a prime minister, and then the president would be almost like a replacement monarch. I mean, it's I really don't know how these people think it would work. But in my belief, it would cost far, far more than having the family that are there. And the family are characters. So as well as performing constitutional duties and functions and helping with the economy, an awful lot of people can relate to family struggles. So by their very being, they make it relatable. There is no difference between them and us. They are born and they will die. We shall all die. That is something we all have in common. That's instantly relatable. How they live, how they go about, how we go about, we are many, there are many different types of people. It's just that those moments, births, deaths and marriages, that's sort of what bring us all together. And then some of us like to watch the in-between of how things are evolving and unfolding, including, of course, them having family illness or struggles or difficult family members like Meghan and Harry. It's really not being made clear to the youth that Harry is no longer representing or working for the royal family. For my son to think and not be clear, well, has he left or hasn't he? Is he or isn't he? To me, that was an eye-opener that things need to be clarified. But in the interim, I think it would be really great if there was a documentary series, possibly even on Netflix, dare I say. And I think it would be a big seller of, for example, I mean, people hear phrases like page of the backstairs or that sort of thing, ladies in waiting. I know the Queen doesn't call them that now. And it all sounds very grand and distant. I think if an audience, probably best on Netflix, actually saw this is a person and they could interview them and say, you know, my name's Betty, I've worked for the royal family, my mother worked for the royal family, or this is how I got the job. It would fascinate people, and it would actually have nothing to do with the principal members of the royal family. They wouldn't be talking about that. They would be talking about their role that they play in 1,000-year tradition and institution. I really, really would love to see the royal family fight back in that way. And when I say fight, I don't mean, you know, let's get the gloves off. For example, the royal family did fight back when Meghan said she wasn't allowed to wear the same colour. The rule was that royals couldn't all wear the same colour. And hey presto, they all wore burgundy to Catherine's Christmas concert to make the point. That's very slick, that's very clever, it made the point. But I think people only see the principal royal family and they don't see all the paddling under the surface by the people who work in the institution, how many staff there are that work in the institution. I mean, a couple of thousand, I would guess. I don't know the figures off the top of my head. And then if you multiply those wages, let's say one of them is on, I don't know what the average wage in the UK is now, say £15,000 a year. Do you see what I mean? Then to young people, they can begin to put it into some perspective and think, oh, actually, the actual people who are working in the palace, they're not multimillionaires, they are not royalty. They work bloody hard to clean or to perform their duty. They have a family, they're supporting their family, And then they will begin to understand, and perhaps Harry might even begin to understand that on occasion, when he may have been curt, shall we say, to members of staff or in front of colleagues, let's call them colleagues because they work with the royal family, or for Meghan to be bloody, rude or bully in front of these people, they will get upset, they will talk to their colleagues, they will talk to their friends, they and their colleagues will go home and unload to their family will then go the next day to their workplace and repeat stuff. And that's how the rumours get in the newspapers. Because I think that at the moment Buckingham Palace is sort of a faceless organisation where perhaps a lot of people think it's just a small family that live in a massive building. I don't think they realise there's a lot of staff accommodation in there. A lot of the renovations have been involved to make the living accommodation of the staff better, bring them up to standard. It's so frustrating, and I really felt the other night, Ben was bombarding me with so many misconceptions. I didn't know where to begin, really. And I honestly, I know a lot of you are going to go, ooh, Netflix. But I think that would be the ultimate. Can you imagine Netflix? They would love a contract like that. And then it would become globally accessible. For example, The Crown, the dramatization, which is, as we all know, not factual. Although a lot of people think it did damage, I think equally it made a lot of the royal family more relatable. I mean, Princess Anne, for example, for people to see her depicted as this feisty young woman in riding boots, which she was. Let's face it. Well, for those of you old enough to remember, I remember she was my princess. To see her like that, just saying things like "not bloody likely" or "get knotted," that made her relatable to the younger people. The early seasons of The Crown, I think, helped increase the popularity of the royal family tremendously. I really do. I think that depiction probably did more good than harm. But what I'm suggesting is not a dramatisation. I'm suggesting, to examine and to look into the different roles that people play. And it's been done before where they just show people laying the cutlery out for a royal banquet. I'm talking about some of the really unusual traditional roles within the palace. So that people can explain the difficulties of how their job works. Also in the kitchen, much more in the kitchen, to show how the preparation, how they have to consider dietary needs, without giving any security away. Well, let me know what you think. Do you think it would help, or do you think it would make things worse? I look forward to seeing your comments below. Thank you very much for listening, and may your God go with you.